So we'll make this, I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just for the public meeting, we're going to have the January board meeting will be January the 9th instead of the 2nd. December will still be, December is still no change. No change. Okay. Any public comment? Seeing none. Approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the last regular meeting, and I have the December calendar for check signing filled out.
So moved to be approved as presented the second time.
Sorry, what?
Minutes.
What about?
I said, so I asked that they be approved as how they were presented the second time. Yeah.
You were correct, yes.
Okay. Second. Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Cheryl, you are on deck.
Please, right. Please, I said. You want me to go get that?
Okay. There we go.
All right, we did have a very, very busy month in September. We had 336 patients year over year. That's 100 patients more than we did the first 3 months of last year. Every single category here was higher than the average of last year. Also, very busy in ancillary services. Every single category, well, except for ED, was above last year's average. So, in addition to that, our length of stays was longer and our swing days were a little longer, so it all adds up to what Teresa knows was a very busy month.
Is it looking that way for October too?
Oh my gosh, yes, maybe worse.
And November.
And November?
It's been nuts. Our gross charges for the month were $3.66 million. A very good month. Not a record month, but a very good month. Quite a bit above the average for last year. Our collections on accounts receivable are $2.1 million right here. Not bad. Maybe like to see a little bit higher, but not bad. Given some of the current challenges that we are facing. Our days in the ER went down a day to 67. Still squishing down little by little. Our days
Great
cash
trend.
on hand.
It's got to convert it to cash.
Our days cash on hand went up 5 days, was 50 to 55. Not bad news. And then looking at our our current month, the month of September, comparing it to budget and comparing it to prior September. So our total operating revenue was above budget and well above last year. Our total expenses were less than budget and more than last year. Our net gain for the month was $429,000, which is a very, very good month. Sorry. Which is budgeted at 100, so 300 above budget, and prior September we lost some money, so a lot better than last September. But more importantly is how we're doing year to date after 3 months. Our revenue is at $8.1 million, which is actually $560,000 below budget. it's actually $1 million more than we did last year after the first 3 months of the year. Expenses are below a little below budget because your revenue is below budget, but maybe not as much as you'd like to see it, and more than last year. Again, no surprise there. Our net gain year-to-date is now at $118,000. We budgeted $334,000, so we're behind by $216,000. Last year-to-date, at this moment in time, we were at a loss of $200,000. We're $400,000 better than the first 2 months of last year. Balance sheet, the AR is up a bit, cash is up a bit, debt is up a bit. We are able to borrow $700,000 on the bond right now. We've got all the paperwork to the inspector so that he can plan a trip over here. So as soon as he gets over here and inspects the EMS building, we will be able to borrow that money. So I would hope that before the end of November.
Which inspector is that?
So if I can explain that. What the bank requires on every, and they have since we started the $14 million borrowing, is they, when we submit pay requests, or when we get requests from the contractor to pay for work that is done, the bank hires an independent architect who comes and looks at the requests for what the contractor has requested us to pay, and the percentage of work done. And then that independent architect makes a comparison and says, I agree or I disagree that percentage of work has been done, and payment justifies the work done. So that's what this process does. We also have to get an opinion from our bond counsel. So when we did this financing, it was very, very specific to nonprofit and government financing, because we're a health district. So about 3 years ago, the Trump administration, there was Obama administration, there was anxiety that they were going to take away this financing. It didn't happen, but we still have to, every time we ask for the bank requires that any time we get a payment, we have to hire our bond counsel to verify the law hasn't changed, so it is still tax exempt health district public financing, and nothing has been done to impact that status. So what we do is we lump our requests from the bank, because it's several $1,000s to get that legal fee and then to pay directly for the architect to come out and double check the request. Every time we ask the bond counsel to give us an opinion, they're happy to charge us for that. That's just what we're facing. Okay? That's the reason and that's who we are asking. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Okay, you have any questions on the public health district? Oh, okay, Charlie wants to talk about unbudgeted capital purchases, requests, not purchased yet.
So I sent you some information about our washer dryer situation. And I did verify one of the washers is 17 years old. The other is in excess of 25. Generally, you're lucky if you get 10 years, but we have held them together. We've repaired them as the best that we can. Now, if we replace one of the motherboards that went out on the washer, it's about, if I understand it correctly, $5,000 or $6,000. Well, a brand new one, you saw the prices. It's 2 washers at $13,000. It doesn't make a lot of sense not to replace them. We have had the dryers in our capital budget to replace.
So 2 washers,
Uh, I believe it was $13,000 for the 2 washers. And then we have the 2 dryers for the total, plus installation, removal of the all material, brings it to the $39,000. Now, we have put in our capital budget every year but this year to replace those dryers. When they go out, we have a problem. And we've thought about replacing the washers too. We've certainly budgeted. We didn't this year. We, during our budgeting process, were very concerned about our cash. And so we pulled out some items that we weren't sure we could, maybe we could go another year without replacing because of the cost to replace them. And pay for that through, whether we paid cash or we leased them or some means. So they're frankly not in the budget for this fiscal year. I don't think we, with the washer out, we're now using 1, and the 1 is the 25 plus years that old. We took the opportunity to look at what other options we have. One other option is to contract with laundry services. Many of the hospitals on the I-5 corridor, not all, but virtually all, use the prison system. And they do the laundry for the hospitals. And it's a big business. We asked if they would be interested, and they said, we don't have the interest and we don't have the capacity. The other reason for lack of interest is not because they can't charge us, but because of the delivery and the fear of trucks and all that sort of thing.
Are the local prison?
They get their laundry from the state prison system. They already had that as part of the state that does that. So the state takes care of itself through the prison laundry system, and then they contract with other entities. Lots and lots of long-term care facilities, most of the major hospitals. So we don't really have any other choice. St. Charles doesn't use the prison system, but the system that St. Charles uses, that I believe Asante and I'm pretty sure Sky Lakes, that system doesn't have the capacity, doesn't have anything. So once again, our options are limited.
The school district uses Salesco.
But they don't have, that's really, the kinds of things the school uses are for uniforms, and the scale is significantly smaller. We have dirty laundry, needs to have high temperatures for washing, high temperatures for cleaning, to ensure infection control is maintained properly. We have to use special chemicals for our cleaning process. So that's why the other laundry, hiring laundry service is not an option.
Could we provide services to the school and DOC during this round?
I haven't asked. I don't know if we could beat the Department of Corrections cost. They have reminded me, when I asked them about food service, and when they pay, what they get is somewhere in the ballpark of $3.50 per inmate per day for 3 meals that they get. We couldn't possibly buy the food for that cost. It's extraordinarily low cost, but they grow some of their own and they get really good contracts. So we could ask. I didn't do that just because we know how tight.
Well, it takes a long time to make some sort of agreement, but I know, I talked with the superintendent of the DOC, and he seemed favorably disposed to.
Oh, would he?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well, I'd be happy to discuss that. We think the size of the units, they're 60-pound washers, 170-pound dryers. That's the weight of the load that's in it. We don't run them constantly every day, but we may have capacity to consider the prison system. Well, yeah, and if they had the capability of allowing us to do laundry on the weekend, that might be another option. Because right now, we predominantly do our laundry Monday through Friday, and then we still pick up and deliver fresh laundry, but we may not be doing heavy loads. But that could be an option.
Charlie, when you're looking at an additional capital purchase, then do you look at others that have been budgeted or not yet purchased to take from that?
I do.
How do you decide?
It's the hardest part we have. So when we look at the items that we have in our budget, and we say, okay, well, say a big item is IT, and we have replacement of computers, or we have some hardware that we need to replace. And it won't be long, and Stephen here will be saying, oh, no, we really did need that. And then another, so it's really a frustrating process, because we get faced with these difficult to make choices. I don't know as how we can't get this.
Yeah.
We might be able to.
I understand that, I'm just wondering, okay, now, being that is in, what is out?
Do you have these items listed below it for a reason? Are they items you're looking at pulling out, or why are they all listed?
So, the iStat is a piece of equipment that we did not budget for, and it is used by both the lab and the pulmonary.
So all these are unbudgeted items?
No, the ultrasound is budgeted. The, we budgeted $150,000. We got a grant from the Collins McDonald Foundation of $100,000. So could we use some of that money from the, that we had budgeted for the, of the $150,000 we had budgeted for the ultrasound? Could we use maybe some of that $100,000? I'd like to say yes, but then there may be another, oh my goodness, we've got to get this item that might come up. You know, it's hard for me to say, oh yeah, we just won't do that other thing, and then we still need to do that. We only come to you when we have items like this that have not been budgeted that we need to consider.
So the ultrasound was budgeted for 150, but net will be paying 48.
That's correct. The pulmonary function test, but we originally budgeted 50 because that is the cost. A typical way of doing it in most hospitals that provide this service is a glass box, and if the patient gets inside the glass, because you get claustrophobic, it's a narrow box that you get into, the patient sits in that and then goes through the test, and it enables a positive pressure within that environment. So a lot of times frail patients can't just up and blow into these apparatus to measure their lung capacity or lung air transpiration process. This piece of equipment we just found out about, and we've looked at two. It turns out it doesn't need to be in the box. It's a portable piece of equipment, and the machine itself forces air into the patient's lungs, so it sets that pressure. So when the patient breathes into it, it's already in a pressurized environment. It's not big pressure, but it's enough to get the adequate.
So we had budgeted 50, and we're
We
spending.
took that part out. So we actually have not budgeted the pulmonary function testing. But here's the thing about that. We believe, based on now having a more robust provider in our pulmonary department, that we will be able to generate enough tests, this is new tests, to potentially pay for this within a year, if not less than that. So it's a new service. We have talked about it for several years. We've found newer technology that will allow us to get it. We pulled it out because we were just concerned about any kind of spending. We were as conservative as we could. But it would be remiss on our part not to say, if we have an opportunity to buy a piece of equipment that we can pay for itself within a year by delivering a new service that patients right now are leaving the community or simply not getting, I think it's prudent for us to consider. And that's the reason we brought that. Okay? We put, for example, in our budget, roughly $50,000, and just a rough number, for items that surgeons may request. We never know what they may want to say, but we bring in a new surgeon, and he says, or she says, I need this kind of tool, or I think this needs to be done. We never really know. We often don't use that $50,000. So I could say, yeah, that's where that might come from. But you're going to hear me talk about another physician that we're recruiting. And that physician might come and say, now that I'm here, this is a tool I really need. And this will allow me to practice in the way that I need to. So that's why it's hard for me to say in absolute certainty that I won't be using it. Does that make sense? So sometimes we look at things that we don't have much choice in. Sometimes we do have a choice in. And so we have a combination of it. The washer, dryer, we could maybe hold off the dryers, but we really need to get the washers. The dryers we're still able to get parts for them. We can't get parts for the washers, but the dryers are equally of that age. The pulmonary function testing, I think it's prudent to consider. Cheryl and I have talked about maybe we find some leasing for it rather than paying cash for it. And if we think that that's something we ought to do, and we live within the covenants, that would be a better use of our cash than just paying cash for it. The iStat sterilizer, that machine broke. We need that. We didn't budget for it. It's used. How often would you say?
Several times a week, probably, at least
Right.
a couple times a week. Respiratory therapy, and then it's shared with the lab, so they use it, and I'm not sure how often they use it, but.
What tool is this?
Pardon me?
What?
It's called the iStat. That's the third item in that
arterial
list.
blood gases.
How old was it?
How old was it? I think it was about 15 years old.
We use most things we struggle with the issue, do we use it until it breaks, or do we try and budget and replace it before it does? Sometimes we get caught when we had budgeted, or we didn't budget for it, but sometimes we get it right. And then the ultrasound, even today, Dr. Gallagher was he was in speaking with me, talking about how we had a very busy hospital. In fact, we had to divert patients. If we got we had to send them to another hospital, it was too busy. We had a patient in the emergency room that was taking one-to-one care. We had a patient in our cardiopulmonary department waiting for a test. All of the ultrasound units were busy and patients had to wait. We just simply couldn't deliver enough services. So he was again advocating to me. We asked Collins McDonald last January, December for the money. We got it in July or June. Can we please get this? It would add to add to the number of pieces of equipment we have, it would allow us to take our oldest piece of equipment and put it in clinic, where the doctors often will just pull it in to check on a pregnant mother or a patient and say, yep, you need to have this kind of test, and send them to the radiology department. So we've planned on it, but we really need to get that done. So what I'm asking for is that we purchase the, I believe, washer dryer. If you want to limit that, we can do that.
And you're saying that the cost with installation is roughly $39,000?
Not roughly, yes, we have an exact, I think I mailed that out to you. And it had the,
It says $3,500 here.
Well, they dropped. I missed the
Dropped the
zero,
zero.
I just saw that.
Little typo.
excuse me for that. But that we verified today that it was a fixed price for, they're not charging for the installation, they're charging for the shipping. And when you look at the units, they're big units. They're easily weigh 1,000 pounds for the washers, so they've got shipping. It could be here within 6 weeks. So if that one existing washer doesn't work, we may be calling prison to do which we have done in the past when something has broken, just so that you know. But we verified that included the shipping costs and installation. So yes,
Would the company take the old equipment
it's removing that too.
on the two dryers? Would there any need of those? On the two dryers that are still functioning well, do you have any usage of those or?
None that I know. One of the questions you had, I think, was could we allow them to be converted to natural gas, or should that happen? We have a large propane tank here. It is almost exclusive. We use it for our backup. So we have 4 forms of heat here at the hospital. We have the geothermal heat. We have propane for our backup generators and for these dryers. We have diesel fuel for our backup power, and we have electricity. We have generators for lights. So those are the 4 sources of energy that we can use. If natural gas were to come here, we could, without too much problem, convert that from propane.
Yeah, I just call it that. Are they coming with natural gas orifice and we need to change them out to propane?
Okay, but
Are they coming already equipped for natural gas or do we need to change them out for propane? Was kind of the question.
I don't know the answer
Just
to
something to check.
that. I believe that it's orifices and how that's set, so it's a relatively easy transfer back and forth. I'm fairly confident that's the case. It is on residential equipment. I'm not positive about the industrial grade that these are.
Just something to check.
We can verify.
While we're on the topic of equipment, this facility as a whole is about, not whole, but this is roughly, 10 years?
Oh, the new
Yes.
side.
On the new
This
side,
is the old
yes.
side.
So are we gauging various equipments throughout this new park that may be, let's get them 10 years old that we might need to change out?
So one of the things that we try to put in our budget is an expiration date on pumps. So we have several hundred pumps throughout the building that pump water, that pump heat, that pump lots and lots of different things. And our maintenance crew is responsible to maintain those pumps. Sometimes they can maintain them, they can take them apart and service them. If they can, they're expensive to replace, and we are staying on them. We're very aware of the ages of people. Does anybody have any other questions about this?
I don't know that we need any action on this, but,
We do need the action on approving the non-budgeted items. And those are the first three. The last one on the ultrasound, I put that in by mistake. I wanted to make sure you were aware of that, because I think we need to still do that.
So the three items listed there, other than the ultrasound, are the unbudgeted items.
Unbudgeted.
so.
And that 35 should be a 39,000, am I correct in that assumption?
Yes. And that is the information that I sent to you yesterday.
That was supplemental. So we've got the washer and dryer at 39,000, the pulmonary function test equipment at 30,000, and the iStat analyzer for 10,000. So it's $79,000.
Well, I support it as long as we have the expenditure. That motion.
Is that a motion?
Discussions.
Any discussion?
I agree along with saying that.
I'm fine with that concept.
Okay.
Then I could put it to a motion that I move we accept the three items listed here that are unbudgeted, as long as we keep our capital expenditures for the year within our budget.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded to approve the unbudgeted capital purchases, the washer dryers, pulmonary function, and the iStat analyzer. All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Women's Spruce Lake Medical Services.
The Lakeview Gardens has been pretty steady, excuse me. Continuing steady, the year-on-year collective increase in total patients is 392 at this point in the year. Those charges for Lakeview Gardens was 158,000, and ALF was 140,000. Neither building is entirely full right now, but we are continuing to make headway and bringing patients in. So,
Why would we drop down to 40, and I know there's 2 months ago it was 57?
because we're short a couple of patients. And Larry's going through the waiting list, and he's got several people who are in the works.
So one of the things to keep in mind is people that are in the assisted living, it is not uncommon for them, their health conditions to change, and that they need to need to move into long-term care. And so as they do that, that frees up a room. Sometimes the patients have to leave the assisted living and may actually have to go to the hospital. So when that happens, they become a patient in the hospital. We don't try to fill that bed. We expect them potentially to be able to go back to the assisted living. Sometimes that doesn't happen, so they need to go.
I guess I'm just doing the math, and it's usually around, what, 5,000 to stay? We're now in like 3
It's
from
more
2
than
months
that.
ago.
Yeah, their base is 4,000, and then most of them have level of care, bringing them closer to 5 or 6, depending on their level of care. And I think we're down to, we had 1 move in and 3 move out.
Okay.
It could be, no, that could be that, okay, so never mind.
A lot of movement over there last month.
They moved
Yeah,
to
there
long-term
has
care.
There has
Those
been.
patients went to long-term care.
Sorry, Teresa?
They moved to long-term care, so.
I was under the assumption that we had a waiting list, and that's the reason I wondered why are we dropping 17,000 2 months that people are wanting to get?
So we have a waiting list. Sometimes the condition of the people on the waiting list, I mean, we don't call every week and say, so are you still healthy and ready to come in? Several of the people that were on our waiting list died, or their conditions changed such that they couldn't. they weren't eligible to come into the assisted living. So we're getting outdated lists. And if people come in, and then family members will come in and say, I'd like to, now that a room is available, I want to see it. I'm ready to move somebody in, or maybe I'm gonna wait for a little bit, or we go through that kind of process.
Total revenue was $199,000, really close to where we were last year at this time with revenue and expenses. So our net for the month was a loss of $121, we're at $393 on the year. So it kind of just stays steady. It moves around where the revenue and expenses are, but it still is kind of static. Overall organization. And the balance sheet didn't change. It really never does, depending on, we try to bring the cash back to the hospital as much as we can.
It looks like contracted labor improved quite a bit.
It did include quite a bit, but I am also worried that's more about timing of the bills. So we're pretty behind on those bills, as far as getting them here approved and paid. So we're pretty cautious with those bills because they're huge, and
Don't we accrue them?
if we have them,
Sometimes the companies are quick, sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
Sometimes they make, it's a very lengthy process to ensure that what the contracted employee time they put in, we have to validate that that's correct. We have to, I mean, there's many steps.
With health medical supply, is getting back to normal. We had a revenue of $20,000 for the month. They had a profit of $1,721. I got a really positive report from Brian Lucas that the Brightree software is working really well. He's really happy with it. He says he's caught up on his billing. He thinks he's going to stay there.
That's the gentleman running
Runs the Lake Medical Supply, the TV business. So he's very positive about it. So hopefully this will be kind of getting back to normal. That's it.
Mr. Vance, I believe you're up. Thank you, parade.
What's it called?
The summer cereal?
Did I not talk to her?
I don't know.
Yes, but
Oh, wait.
zero.
Passed down.
I thought I did.
I've got 3 copies.
I can go make another copy if you'd like.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I thought I dropped it in there.
While she's making copies, I can talk about it. I think I've given a lot of updates to a lot of board members here, but some of them I haven't. And Don, I don't think you've heard my updates before on Cerner. So I've given quite extensive updates before. So this is a Cerner serial update as of last month. We created an update for all of our employees. Some of the big events that are coming here pretty soon is we have Train the Trainer in Kansas City that's going to be occurring on November the 18th. And there'll be 22 people going to Kansas City, super users and subject matter experts from various departments all over.
How many days is that conference?
We'll be flying Monday morning and coming out Friday. So we'll be that whole week. Key people in various departments that are going to be trained up as much as we can, or at least trained to become super users. So that's a big event coming that I'm basically coordinating, all the travel and logistics and hotels and what have you. Thank you, Susan, I appreciate that.
Steve, are the oil plant on the same plane, or do you have different routes?
All the same plane flights coming in and out, so it makes it easier to logistically come in and out. So
We do not have a corporate policy that limits the number of employees on one airplane.
So I'll say like, just 2 months.
On what?
Yeah. So that will be a big week for us, and we're all looking forward to that event. As of a couple weeks ago, we started doing provider virtual training calls, and those are opportunities for providing demonstrations and trainings for providers. Recordings are going to be all, or actually trainings are all going to be all recorded for the providers. So we're looking forward to that. We've had a couple providers, key in, but they're very busy, and so these are opportunities that we're giving them to learn prior to. Going down the center serial here, we have the Disney theme for engagement of all the employees here at Lake Health District. John's never heard this before, so it's all brand new. He knows that. It is Mickey Mouse, and so every department was required to create a theme, to have some sort of theme in a movie that they chose to make it fun and engagement. And so far, psychologically, it's been very effective. So, these are things that CERN has recommended we do, and we've taken them to heart, and it is working for us. And so,
Sounds like they have experience in
they do have a lot of experience with implementations for all the hospitals across the country. We had an inspirational poster winner. Anybody who creates the best poster was given to Home Health and Hospice.
Is that the one right down the hall there?
It says Homeward Bound.
No.
That one is awesome, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones
That
out
one's
there right now.
AT's
Yeah.
poster.
So looking at the side here, you see all the little sayings with all the little departments. So since everybody's been really clever with regard to it, and it's a form of engagement, which is really good. As of right now, it says 166 days, but this was, I calculated as we're sitting here, it's 157 days as of today that go live is going to be with Cerner. And we're just letting everybody know that, reminding them to go live April 30th, 2020, and that 6 weeks prior to that go live, we're going, all the super users and subject matter experts are going to start training train all the rest. So it's going to be a big ramp up prior to probably the beginning of April for a big training. The timing is everything for these big projects to make sure that you don't want to train somebody and 4 weeks later they forget, type of thing, especially for providers. So we're doing a lot of good things here, and we're excited about it, and everything's moving forward, moving along. Workflow integration a couple weeks ago went very well. That was when like 25 certain employees arrived here and talked to their respective departmental managers and experts and learned about their workflows. And there was a lot of integration discussions, and so that was important that we did that. Yes, you have a question?
So how long does CPSI and Cerner run parallel?
Good question. So right now, our CPSI primary contract expires July of 2020. At that point, we're going to go to CPSI legacy systems. And we need that around so we can bring down the AR days and use it for archival purposes. And that's the one right now that I know that we're going to definitely keep an archival system ongoing because it's a year-by-year contract for the legacy. So that significantly reduces the cost of what, $1,300, I think it's $13,000 or whatever, to $2,500 a month. So it's going to be significantly lower on that one. I'm in the process of vetting out all the other systems right now. I had a call today, as a matter of fact, with regard to a third-party system that can be an archival program for us. Where we extract the data out of eClinicalWorks, our outpatient systems, and CPSI, and maybe some data out of point-of-click care, and maybe out of Credible. When you go with Credible in a year from now, Credible, which is our behavioral health system, is not going live with CERN at the same time that community works and everything else is for a timing issue. So we need to have some means of, by federal law, to keep the data available and archived and ready and available. And I'm looking at solutions there for that. So that's part of the process of what I'm working through and vetting out It takes time to figure out what exactly is needed with the data and how far we need to go back to certain systems. That answers your question.
There's a couple things that you may understand about how we view data. So an electronic health record is a large part of what CPSI does for us. But we also have the accounting system, the GL system, and that's embedded in CPSI. And we also have our personnel system, so that's embedded in CPSI. With Cerner, they're different products. So within Cerner, we will not have a GL system. That is another system that will run parallel and connect to the Cerner system. And that's called True Multiview. Then we don't have in Cerner a payroll system. So we will be going live on the first pay period of 2020, which actually starts the end of December with Paylocity, different software system. So when Stephen talks about maintaining legacy, some of it's,
But these are all integrated.
they're all
They're
integrated.
all integrated.
They're all integrated, but they're different vendors providing different components. So Cerner's going to be focused on the electronic health record in all these different areas. Paylocity will be our payroll system. And you can imagine the kinds of challenges just wearing these badges. These badges were designed to accommodate CPSI. We're trying to make them so we don't have to replace them, work with Paylocity. All of our time clocks are accessed through this. All of our door locking systems are through this. And there's lots of things. So as we integrate, that's another big part of what Stephen and his crew are working on, is making sure that that integration flows well. Or if it doesn't work, we have to find a solution to that. Okay? So it isn't just one component of the legacy system. We have to be able to look up patient records, patient health information. But we also have GL, and then we also have payroll, and all that kind of thing.
Correct. That's it.
Any discussion, any questions?
No, sounds like we're on track.
It's a lot of work.
We are on track. I'm moving forward, lots and lots and lots of work. That's the key report.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Have a good night.
Okay. Construction update, Mr. Quaid.
So we have a couple projects that we are working on right now. Thanks, Steve. The operating room remodel. We finally got, just this past week, the balancing completed. So what we did in that operating remodel is we accommodated the orthopedic surgery needs of having larger trays in our washing system, and then larger trays in our autoclave system. And then those trays had to be stored in a way. So we changed the storage location, we changed how our washer works, we changed where our nurse anesthetists sit, because that's where the storage is. And last but not least, when we changed our autoclaves and improved them and made them fit right, lo and behold, we did pass the test of positive pressure in the room that the autoclave was working. So we had to have it re-engineered and vent the air in the room, because when an autoclave releases its steam, it has to go someplace. It normally goes, but it couldn't maintain the pressure. So we had to have that redone. In order for the state to sign off finally on the project, we had to have an inspector come in and balance it and verify that it had been balanced. That was accomplished this week. It's now to the state. We should be finished with that project.
So when our orthopedic surgeon comes in, this will be ready for.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Unless he or she wants something
No, this accommodates,
Bite your tongue.
You were
this
listening.
accommodates
I
those
was listening.
needs.
This was when Mary first came, this was the project we started on and we're just now, okay.
That's correct. We're gonna be a little more aggressive and possibly kicked out the doctors out of the sleep room, because that's right next to where the operating room is, where you can store the tape. We actually store some of our equipment in the old long-term care facility, because there just isn't the space. Storage space is so expensive, especially in a hospital. We have to send a nurse down there to go get stuff, or an employee to bring it back and clean it and bring it to the operating room. So it's not optimum, but this was the least expensive and most efficient way we could accommodate those needs. So that, I'm pleased to say, is virtually completed.
It all goes back to you guys who was on the hospital board and the early planning of this, which you did not account for.
So in response to that, and I think
You
that,
better be careful.
You just got
I think you might be talking to
so
yourself.
one of the things that I want you to understand and think about, when the architects were here on the original redo of the hospital, the main addition and this remodel, we talked a little bit about life expectancy of the building. And what they're quick to say is, we can design a building and it'll last 30, 50 plus years. The building that we're currently in, the long-term care, the old rehab section now that was the hospital, there's nothing wrong with the building. The building itself will stand up. The problem is, you can't design functionality to last longer than maybe 10 years. So, what that means is, while the designs were as best we knew when we were developing the designs, the way we deliver service changes. Right now, we have asked the architects to come in and help us with our emergency room. Our emergency room doesn't flow the way we envisioned it to flow. And as a consequence, we have a waiting room that doesn't get used. Did we screw up? Yeah. Or you could say, frankly, we thought it would work, it didn't work. We put in hoppers in our trauma room. Hoppers that are used for when you put on casts, the old plaster of Paris. You wanted to catch that material before it goes into the sink and locks up the plumbing. Guess what? We went to plastic. We don't use plaster of Paris much. So as a consequence, while it made sense when we designed it, it doesn't make sense today. And those are the kinds of things. So when we talk about changes that are occurring, the reality is it's going to happen all the time.
So, Teresa, thanks. You took up.
I believe you were on the board at the time you designed
So he
it.
did a copy of
That was my point, I think he was talking to himself.
So
Thank changes.
bear that in mind as we look at issues, as we come up and say, well, that was great, but now it's not what we anticipated.
It's good that things change. And that advances.
It does. It does. And sometimes we think this is a great idea, and we were wrong. It's the way it works. So, on to the other buildings, the freezing pipes in the Lakeview Gardens. You recall, we've talked, does everybody remember the issue of that? We have both pipes on the external portions of the building, as well as internal. And we've had freezing pipes in the past 2 years. So the engineers and architects have all been huddling and trying to figure out what to do on that. They think they have a solution, then they change their mind and they're back to another solution. We're on the verge of getting that taken care of. They understand this is going to be a cold winter and we want to have it resolved. So they're pretty much come to a conclusion. Now you might ask, why didn't we put pipes in the ground like other construction? We have geothermal pipes through the flooring to heat the building. So you couldn't get access to some of the other pipes. That's why.
Heat tape.
Heat tape is one solution. The problem with heat tape is that once it's there, it has a life expectancy. Let's say it's 5 years, then you gotta go and replace it. It's a very labor intensive, and the pipes that are on the edges of the outside walls, they're impossible to get to. Heat tape was one of the suggestions that one group suggested, and we said, we're not gonna do it. Because what will happen is, once the contractor's gone, and the warranty period is up, it's up to the maintenance department to make the changes. Or we hire a contractor. It gets to be really expensive to do that. So we want to try and get this done well as possible. So they're working on that. The clinic's building, the door frames, remember we talked about the door frame problems? Those have arrived, and they will start working nights and weekends to replace all the door frames and not interrupt care. That is not something that is costing the health district other than inconvenience. And then the door sleeves that go on the door frames are going in some of the plans. So that should be starting in a week or so.
So that's all under warranty, we're not.
It is all under warranty. We also have the issue with the windows. We notified them that the windows were, they're not breaking. The seals, no, they're not leaking. But it appears that the seals are, because of facing the west, the heat is causing them to not be the way they're supposed to. It may be warping, it may be bubbling, it may be, and it appears that if they're not replaced, I mean, we don't want to be stuck in 2 years saying our windows are. So we've made a big deal with that. The manufacturer has said, no, we think they're okay, but we have a 20-year guarantee of the windows. The problem is, it doesn't guarantee the installation right. So, while the manufacturer will guarantee the window, if it breaks, you have to put it in yourself. We want them to guarantee that they will put it in and bring it to correct at no extra cost to the district. And that's the issue that has not been resolved. They have guaranteed, the window manufacturer has said they'll do it, hasn't been done yet. EMS building is the next construction part. We have, can you click on the cost analysis, or the change order, that'll work. So I don't know if, are all of you familiar with change order requests and construction reporting? Yes. So what you do is go to, it should be view, let's see, page view, and it's not going to do it. Turn up in the corner, or over left, there,
That one, okay.
again, perfect.
I normally don't
Thank you.
do this.
So, this is a standard application for payment. We are on payment number 3, it still has not been validated. This is payment number 2. So, as you can see with, I just want to,
Okay. Yeah,
sorry.
push the center button. The
Center button. Okay, so this is the original contract price. The $167,600 is the adjustments that we talked about, which include the $162,400 for the sprinkler system, the light poles, and the backup generator. Okay, so that's what that number is. Total cost completed to date, the amount that retainage that's held back, the so that's the requested amount is the $347,039.75. Then if you'll scroll down to the next page, what this does is, so here are the scheduled costs of the actual work completed from previous periods, this current period, if there's any stored equipment, completed to date, percentage of completion, the balance to finish, and the retainage. Retainage is the amount that is held back from by the contractor to the subcontractors to make sure they finish their job. That gets finally released to them when we finally say it is a completed project. Okay? And then next page. And this is the request by Anderson Construction saying this is where Daryl Anderson, as the architect record of this project, is saying he believes that this is the requested amount. Okay? Any questions about this process? I normally don't provide every month this information, but I wanted for new board members to understand the documentation that we get in this construction process. This is all submitted to the bank, and then from that, this is how their independent architect validates the work is done and payment is appropriate.
Are we sharing this with the big disaster unit, so they know what the total is looking at?
I haven't. I can.
I think we should.
I'm happy to do this. This is just the interview.
I don't get all the detail, but to show what the total is, because we had talked in the previous board meeting that at the end of all this, they're going to get this total. We'll to recommend bill.
I will
And since they're not surprised about how did it get to this number, we thought was this number.
So
And that's a good breakdown, so you can see item by item what it costs.
They can see what you're getting. Yeah, so that they also know that they still have their own furniture and completion of what exactly.
Right. I just want to make sure we're communicating very transparently through this process. So they know that the prices have gone up from when we first discussed this.
And what I have provided, and I'll make sure that they get this so that this is as clear as possible. If you recall, at 2 board meetings ago, when Daryl brought a spreadsheet with a list of costs and the amount of donations and then the total costs, which included the original price, change orders, and then the base and telecom, the permit fees, and he had an increase in engineering fees. Do you recall that part? So that is this document. I thought I had sent that here. I'll send it again. It's only changed with the 2 change orders, or 3 change orders that we have. One is what you just saw. The second is to put a culvert in from the parking lot from one side to the other. And then the third is to the way the corner of that building, or where the building is located, we have a service road that goes east and west in front of it, and then goes straight south to 9th Street. The water historically flowed from the hospital past and then moves on to 9th Street where the drainage is. So they put in a culvert and left those large concrete barriers along the curved corner. The reason we put those concrete barriers was because delivery trucks drive by, cut the corner, and cause a problem there. What I asked them to do was to design so that the water that flows from on the north side of the parking lot goes to where the side goes through the access road, straight south toward the 9th Street. And instead of collecting in a pool where those barriers were, continue the culvert connect it to where the vehicles would drive in and move the water all the way up. Fill that with soil and put a concrete edging. Remove those,
Edging, or you mean a curb?
a curb,
Okay.
yes. Because after all, we're putting our sign right there that says Lakeview Disaster Unit Station, right there. And I didn't want to have water collecting, I wanted to process them. That was not included in the original design. So,
I'd like, when we give them the information, to just remind them that they're still responsible for the furnishing of the completion.
absolutely.
Painting and beds and stuff.
I can, it was asked to me at the last board meeting that I make sure that, number one, they have a copy of the contract, they know what the rates are, they know where we're coming from. We provided that information to the disaster unit board. I spoke with one of the board members on either Tuesday or yesterday. And the EMS board has approached the Collins McDonald Foundation for an additional $100,000 to help them with their $250,000 obligation. And they are fully aware of, they've looked at the lease agreement. They haven't had any input. They are not exactly a fully cohesive board, so they have a lot of people with input, but they haven't had any input yet. They understand they need to do that. They are prepared and will be sending us at least a preliminary check of either $100,000 or $150,000 toward construction. And they are working on accepting reviewing, and we expect them to expecting them to accept the lease agreement.
Charlie, is the contractor limited to the number of reimbursements or number of payments they can request? Can he every week say, okay, I want this, or?
Conceivably. Generally speaking, it's every month or something close to that. Generally speaking, because they don't want to carry payroll, and as they bought their supplies as they come here, they want to get paid for it. So they don't want to have that carrying cost. So we have an additional, not $5,000 bill from Anderson Engineering, but a $5,500 additional bill that I received yesterday. So I advised Anderson that I would bring that up to the board. It is within my purview, I guess, to approve that, but I think it's prudent that you weigh in on that. Do you have any?
Why is it
Why?
more?
Yeah,
Would
that's
be my
the problem.
question.
His answer is he had to design additional for the generator. He had to design additional for the culverts and the lighting, and that's why it took additional.
He's also the architect as opposed to
So is he going to show us these extra designs that?
They have prepared. And we have submitted those actually to, they are at the contractor because they have to do the work. And they have been submitted to a bank and their architect.
So did he give us an hourly cut and drive as far as how much he was paid?
No, but I'd be happy to ask that if you want.
That would be nice.
Okay, I certainly can ask that. Any other questions related to that? Just want you to be aware of, as the costs come in, I don't want any surprises. We try to be as sensitive to cost as we possibly can. I wanna make sure that people don't think that just because we're very sensitive and we pay attention to costs, that means we don't have money, or that we're not able to deal with it. But we do watch very carefully all the expenses. Okay? Any questions about that project?
There was some concerns about financing if it wasn't done by the end of the year. Is that all been resolved?
So, what the bank has said, the local representative, is they pulled the money outside of the actual loan and put it into a separate account. We believe that it will not be a problem. They have assured us that they believe it also will not be a problem. But we are using that money first.
What is the updated completion date?
It hasn't changed. I expect it to be the first part of February. The contractor says, oh, I might be done in the earlier part of January.
It's got extraordinarily good weather.
That's an easy
He's been very fortunate. He has been, this has been, so if you haven't seen, he's got 2 walls up already, the windows are up, there's some doors up. So once they get it enclosed, that's marvelous. But yes, weather has been a whole lot better than it was when we were building the garden. And they were in the middle of snow trying to put siding up. It was not positive. So, any other questions related to our construction? Okay.
Hearing none, we'll move on to the CCO 2.0.
Yes, thank you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, is this coming up as a slideshow? Not exactly. This is a PowerPoint. It didn't come up as a PowerPoint.
It's because of, it's, the default programs are set for me on this one, I think.
So, one of the things that, for those of you that are new, wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening with the CCOs in the state of Oregon. We are about, as of January 1, to start into CCO 2.0. Okay, so Eastern Oregon CCO, and they call it 2.0 because the first contracts were for 5 years. They are now ending. The next are, many of the CCOs did get 5-year extensions. We, Eastern Oregon CCO, did. But not all the CCOs did. Some got a 1-year contract. Some got a 3-year contract, depending on some of the criteria that the state is now taking a look at. So, this information is going to be presented next week at a public meeting, but I wanted you to get an idea of some of the issues related to what the CCO is facing. The criteria has gotten more aggressive. The restrictions for the amount of money that each CCO has to maintain in security to ensure that the claims get paid. In Portland, there was a problem. There were 2 large CCOs, and one of the CCOs went out of business because they did not have enough money to make all the claims. Now they're suing and they're claiming that it was not done correctly. There's a lot of issues with that. But the state is saying these CCOs need to be able to be financially strong. So this is an opportunity for every CCO. Every CCO has to go through this process. And these are some general information that they're going to be providing. So Eastern Oregon CCO is, as you can see, makes up a large part of the state with the exception, everything east of the Cascades with the exception of Greater Bend area and that portion of Klamath Falls that is east of the Cascades, but they have their own CCO. These are all the counties where CCO is represented. The ownership, Oregon Dental Society, ODS, formed a company called Moda Health. Moda Health is a 29% ownership, has ownership. Gobi, which is the mental health component, owns 29%. Each of these hospitals has 10%. Now, they're all critical access hospitals, and we had the opportunity to buy a percentage of this business. I recommended to our board at that time that it was imprudent to, for this organization to be an owner. The reason for it is our portion of the population is roughly 3% of the business. 3% of the population, 3% of the business. So to put up the roughly $100,000, 3%, each of the larger hospitals have a market share that's more than percentages of 5 to 10% of the total population. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less. That's why we didn't get involved. Yakima Valley Farm Workers is an organization that is made up of what are called federally qualified health centers, FQHCs. This network is owned by an entrepreneur, and he owns about 40 or so clinics or federally qualified health centers throughout Oregon and Washington. And since a large portion of the business is in the on the I-80 or the 84 corridor, that's where they have clinics and they have a lot of practitioners. That's why they were able to be advisors. The governing board, I get to attend the board, but all of these are, the owners are representative, and then there are some other people that serve on the board. I get to attend, I don't have a vote, but the 5 independent hospitals that are of our size, Lakeview, Burns, John Day, Hepner, and Enterprise, communities that have smaller critical access hospitals. The 5 hospitals have 1 representative that is on voting there. Okay? Each community has what are called local community advisory councils. And this is a requirement by the CCO. It also has a clinical advisory panel, 8 docs, you can see the membership. All of the 12 local or LCACs, community advisory councils, meet and serve on 1 regional council. All of this is stipulated by the state through their requirements. It has to be done. This is the organization that defines how it works. And you can see here's Lake and our role. I'm sorry, it isn't easy to read. But all of these community advisory councils report up to a regional advisory that advises the board of directors. There's a multitude of entities that are state mandated that have to provide this information, and it gets more and more state administered business. It is nothing but exciting work. The CCO area has responsibility for physical health, mental health, and dental health. Dental health is managed through 2 contracts with Advantage Dental and ODS Community Dental. We contract with the Oregon Prescription Program, which is a statewide program to handle our pharmacy, and Gobi for the mental health, and MODA manages the physical health. Currently, we started out in 2016 at 44,000. We have now 50,000. Interestingly, you can see our population and how we compare to Harney or Wallowa, Umatilla, Malheur, Union. Those are the areas where those larger hospitals have that larger population. So, we're proud of how well we've done. We've done reasonably well. Our requirement was that the state said to all of the CCOs is that you could not have a rate of increase greater than 3.4%. Okay? Other states, the cost of healthcare in the Medicaid population has ranged from 2 to 10% every year. So by fixing it to 3.4%, there's been, that was part of the contract with the state. So what the state basically did is said to all of these CCOs, will put the CCO at risk, not the state. The state's only risk is the 3.4%. That's what that rate of increase is, okay? And while Ken was a commissioner, he certainly was a voting member on the board. That vote has now been transferred to James Williams. In our network, the network has what are called patient-centered primary care homes. This is the number of clinics throughout. This became a big issue about 5 years ago when our largest clinic in Lake County would not contract with the CCO. So we're not going to do that. And that became a touch point. That was one of the things that caused the meeting that we had several years ago, and the fervor was because that group would not contract. That group is now a part of Lake Health District, and we do contract. We are a patient-centered primary care home, and we are at level 4 of level 5, the second highest level you can be in terms of the services that we deliver. What makes this interesting about in comparison with all the other CCOs, 7 are type A critical access, 5 are health districts, and we have no tertiary. That means all tertiary services. So if a Medicaid recipient needs to have a heart procedure done, they go out of the area to a contracted hospital. That means you pay differently. What it also means is because we are all guaranteed as critical access hospitals that we get our costs covered. No matter what our experience is, even if we're at risk, we get our costs covered. So the CCO has some risk, but not as much because they know our costs. Whatever we deliver is covered. What's interesting is the bonus dollars we get is not included in our cost report. Okay? This is the mental health world within this environment. We make up a portion of this. These are the dental providers, and that has to be delivered for all 50,000 within that area. Keep in mind, 25% of Lake County is a recipient of this service. 25% of the entire county population. These are the services where the county is required, or the CCO is required to contract with a variety of entities to deliver transportation services. These are the kinds of ranges of specialty care we have. Now, when we talk about how much money has gone back from the CCO over the course of the last 5 years, $114 million has stayed within our communities. Big deal, and we've been big recipients of this. The quality measures, we just received, I believe it's $105,000 for the money that was in last year's risk pool for that.
How does that compare to previous years?
It is comparable, it was close to. The hard part about this is the amount of money in the risk pool keeps getting larger. And so the payments to the hospital actually start dropping, and they push more into the risk pool. Okay? So they're making it more and more difficult for us to meet those risks. So in the first year, the risk was $1 million. Now it's $16 million out of the, well, here's the dollars that we have received, not all in risk pool. This is actually outside of the risk pool dollars. So you can, over the course of the last 5 years, $500,000 is a lot of money that theoretically would not have come to us, because if each doctor had billed for the service or the hospital had billed for that service, we would have gotten paid that. This is an addition to that.
So did that once stop the transformational general?
Yes.
That's not available anymore.
So as the state changes the rules for the CCO changes its motivational structure. And one of the things that was happening is the risk pool dollars, because we were getting money through the patient-centered primary care at home, we had more money in risk pool. Well, the state said patient-centered primary care home dollars are where the benefit needs to be. So they put more money into that and took the money out of the other component. It's a shell game, it's the same dollars, but you get credit for different things. These are the projects that have been going on in Lake County. You've heard us talk about what the CHIP program does, and the monthly meetings, our vendors sing, and all the people that have been working on this. And there's a lot of people putting a lot of time attending these meetings. You can see the things that we have been doing in Lake County.
To add something, on the LCAC, the Community Advisory Council, COCC, when that came about, there's actually two CCOs that was bid. One was North, the San Charles group, but the whole county went to Eastern Oregon. So the CAC is basically a requirement of the county, and at the same time, Charlie got the CHIP one. So the CHIP program and CACC is actually dovetailed together.
That's correct.
Being
So
expanded.
the CHIP Community Health Improvement Plan, or program, that started out about 6 years ago as a venture. It was partially funded by the state and partially funded by the hospital. And we hired a fellow to go and do all sorts of community assessments and ask people what do they think their healthcare needs are, not hospital needs, healthcare needs. And we developed a plan. In many of the counties in Eastern Oregon, I mean, they took advantage of this also. And they were voluntary programs, and they did it for 1 year, developed a plan, and the plan sat on a desk or something.
So we have some employees in the district that are focused solely on this.
Yes. So we have one person right now who is our CHIP program manager. But we did as part of the CCO is we co-opted that CHIP tool, CHIP meetings and the people that were attending, and made that become the Community Advisory Council. The difference between what happened is, number one, then the federal government said all communities, all hospitals have to have a community health improvement plan for every hospital. And so it became mandated that we had to do it. And it has to be updated every 3 years. Not only does the hospital have to do that, but mental health has to do that, and public health has to do that. Okay? So now we create this one plan, and that's with support from the Community Advisory Council. This is only for Medicaid. Our CHIP program is for the entire population. Okay? So we have to keep in mind that that's multiple things. With the organizational chart as demanded by the state on what the CCO has to do, all the different departments, all the people that do different things within the organization, and how they handle it. This is how the board is structured. You can see all of our involvement here at Lake, and then these various committees. This is all state mandated. That's always the goal: better health, better care, and lower costs. These are the next new things that CCO 2.0 is going to be working on. There's going to be a greater push to have community engagement. So what that means is we have to get Medicaid recipients to give us their input about the care that we're to deliver to them. And we have to report to the state how that's working. The hard part about it is, a lot of times, these are individuals that don't always take they aren't as vested in their health care as others might be. So it's a challenging thing for us to do. But the state keeps changing the rules, and we don't have much choice. Here's a perfect example of the kind of change. Let's see if there's anything else that we're working on this integration. We're doing these things. The state had mandated that all the CCOs have to have a certain amount of cash for handling their claims, percentage of claims versus cash that they hold in a bank ready to be paid. And they mandated that the amount be reached by 2021. This past July, the state came out and said, no, we want that rate to be mandated by the end of December 2020, 1 year in advance. What makes it difficult is Eastern Oregon CCO had done a distribution to all the shareholders of $10 million in January. Now it has to put up another $7 million, pay it back to put into this organization. Now you can imagine if we were an owner and we got our portion of that $10 million in 2019, and now in 2020, this fiscal year, we've got to cough up, say we got $1 million, we got to come up with another $1 million. That is causing a hardship for those partners. And this is, if you want to compare how well we've done, we got $564,000 out of these years, 5 years. Baker got 498, Gillum 459, Grant 408, Harney 365, Lake 564.
Nice job.
That is in part to what Christy Albertson is doing, writing the grants, plus what our group is doing. Part of getting the money is not only do you ask for it, you got to deliver and do what you say you're going to do, and then do it the next year. Yeah, we have actually done pretty darn well, I think, for our population. You can see with a much bigger population. Any questions? I just wanted, I know it's a lot of information.
It's very complicated.
It is. And so when we talk about, if you may recall, in September we said we're waiting to find out what kind of money we got back. It's significant money. We got roughly $250,000 from the CCO, and we had no idea what it was going to be. We only got $104,000 notice last week, so they're behind. And yet we were telling our auditors it's material, and it should go in 2018-19 last week. Okay, any other questions?
Just to give it, the EOCC whole is a whole county, and that's greater than 1 tax district is. So Lake Elk district is this big, but this covers the whole county.
So something to keep in mind when I showed you this population number by, where did it go? So we have here, as you can see, there's 1,954 members. I think there's about 800 in Northlake. So we are impacted by the population in Northlake that for a large portion of their care go to Deschutes County for care. But it would have been very difficult for us to separate for this, that portion of the population go to Deschutes County CCO. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I didn't mean it to take quite so long, sorry. All right.
He missed his game. Gift shop letter.
Okay. I hope this doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, because we have talked about, but the auxiliary wanted to make sure that you're aware of this. We've talked about this in our planning meetings, and I think we'll be able to talk a little bit more if you'd like on our meeting on the 18th. Any questions related to this?
Medical staff privileging. You have Dr. Hussey here, I assume that Mr. Clay will take care of that.
I believe that we did have a quorum, they did recommend, they reviewed the privileging, they have sent you the privileging information. So what we need is the board to approve what the medical staff recommends. They're recommending that we have the 3 new members, Ellen Mauser, Casey Coran, and Maureen Philpeck, 2 core radiologists, and our psychiatric nurse practitioner as additional. The reappointment of Mark Bradbury and David Smith. Dr. Bradbury is the general surgeon that has been with us for 20 plus years. Dr. Smith is a emergency room doctor that is on contract that comes here quite frequently. And then the resignations are all radiologists. So it is our recommendation that you approve these credentialing applications.
I would so move. Moved and seconded to approve the medical staff privileging as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Teresa, we finally got to you.
Don't say that.
Sorry, I started eating. So, very busy, as Cheryl said. We've had, in the last week, 2 times where we had to go on divert, which basically means we continue to have an open emergency room, but we can't necessarily admit onto our floor. And that was due to the inability of staff and enough nurses to take care of the high number of patients.
How often has this happened in the last year?
Probably not in the last year. It's happened a few times in the last few years. And the problem is when we have critical patients or labor patients, those take 1 full nurse. So in order to provide care to the rest of the patients and keep the ER open, sometimes we just can't. You know, the nurse manager staff have been working a lot of night shifts to just maintain.
Where do we divert to?
Well, that's the trouble. Because the other hospitals aren't necessarily in any better shape. But ideally, we divert to wherever, the right place for that patient to go would be. So Medford or Klamath or Bend are the typical places.
It's not uncommon for Bend or these other hospitals not to be able to accept a patient. As Dr. Gallagher said to me today, it's really frustrating when we want to send a patient and they have a hard time and they are saying they've got 20 patients boarded, which means they're not quite, they're not resident, but they're like in a patient room in their emergency room when we call to get a patient sent from here.
Yeah.
They're that full.
So we could be caught in catch-22. Today we were able to move a patient out to Bend. So that's happening. We've hired and are starting the development of the cardiac rehab program. So we've hired a nurse in that position. Her name is Lexi Thomas. And other than that, we have a respiratory therapist who has been a traveler, who's accepted the position to stay on and be our lead therapist. So he's been very helpful already in helping us get the right equipment that we need and in recommending the pulmonary function testing. So that's pretty much my report, unless you have questions.
How many open RN positions do you have?
I still have 5, but I do have a plan in place. So we've been interviewing nurses they're actually experienced nurses that come from the international arena. So in January, we should have 2 of them starting. So that will fill 2 more positions.
They'd be as staff, not as travelers.
They're like a traveler, but it's a long-term contract of 3 years. So they feel like staff. And they come with experience, so that helps because we have a lot of nurses that are relatively new. So we're also interviewing another nurse that was presented to us by an agency. So it's my hope that we'll have 3 or 4 in January.
And then finding residents for them.
We aren't doing too bad with Holly's help in HR. She has some good contacts locally that let her know if they have places to rent. But it isn't easy.
And again, we have people.
So that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. With that, we go to the CEO report.
I'll talk fast. I'm trying to get us out of here as quick as I can. So one of the things that, as new board members, I want you to understand, we are constantly in the recruitment mode for staff and physicians. We've been trying to recruit additional practitioners every day. And I interview lots of people. We have some progress that's occurring. We have an OBGYN coming to visit here the 3rd week of November 22. She'll be here to see if that's a possibility to come here. Wouldn't be a full-time, maybe 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, something like that. But, we are really struggling finding the practitioners that are similar to what our physicians are. One of the things that when our physicians came here and the physicians before them, that are full scope practice is what that's called. That means that they see patients in the clinic, they see patients in the hospital, they work in the emergency room, they deliver babies. And they not only deliver babies vaginally, but also cesarean section. So that's a very sophisticated level of care. When we look at new graduates that are coming out and have finished their residency in family practice, seldom do they come with all of those skills. In fact, many are actually opting not to do those things. So it's very, very difficult to find a physician that wants to take on that responsibility. Obstetrics is continually a big problem for us because we don't want to quit the service. And many, many communities, like the community to the south of us in Altura, they gave up this 20 years ago.
Or maybe
Oh no, they have plenty of babies. They just have to evolve. There's no shortage of that opportunity.
But no, they up at the hospital then?
No. So all of their babies have to travel to either Klamath Falls, Reading, Susanville, or here. So finding a physician that will do this. And it's hard to find an obstetrician gynecologist because we don't have enough volume. And then if you get one, you have to really have 2, because if they go on vacation or they're sick or something like that. And then as we bring on more subspecialists from what our family doctors do, their skill set starts changing because they're not delivering them and they're not as tuned to them. So we're dealing with that process. So on the 22nd, we'll have Dr. Fan here. On the 21st, the day before, we will have Dr. Kennelly, who is a family doctor who is interested in working in our Alturas clinic. And she'll be coming from Texas. Dr. Fan's coming from Washington to look about being a permanent placement in Alturas. So that's a really positive thing. If that happens, and we can get that, keep in mind, if they're seeing patients in the clinic there and they're obstetrics, we could do prenatal care there, come here, deliver, and go back and continue having their postnatal care in Alturas. Very positive. have 2 orthopedic surgeons we're working with right now, Dr. Ling Koop, who we've been working on for, it seems like forever. He did get his Oregon license. He was here in August or July, so you may have seen him. If not. He did get his Oregon license the first part of October, but we're waiting. Now the next wrinkle is that the insurance companies have to make sure that they are vetted properly, and that takes 6 weeks. It's incredibly difficult.
Are you saying here at the point where if those all pass, he's ready to say yes?
Oh, no, he's already said yes. He's ready to start. So he'll be starting in December. We were shooting for November, but we couldn't be assured that if he'd see patients, we'd actually get paid. So
We got
wanna
the
make-
first approval, Majoris approved him, so I would venture, I guess, the rest of them are gonna start rolling in. That
Well, you
should
see, here it is, the first part of November, and if we get it sooner, he'll come sooner. It's astounding how long this is taking and how complicated it is. And I wish it wasn't that way. I sent you a bit of information a couple of weeks ago about a fee schedule change. And as our responsibility with public health, we needed to deal with that fee schedule change that went into effect July 1. We presented this information to the commissioners. They thought that we had that responsibility. So what we are doing is we are taking your advice. We have notified all the businesses that are of the new schedule, and it's going to affect as of January 1st.
I got my warning letter already.
So we are
Fee schedules.
well,
I think it was good.
what I wanted to make sure is, I was not under the impression that when the Oregon Health Authority says this is what the fee schedule is, that we have the ability to vary from that. I asked if that's the case, do I have the ability to waiver the amount of taxes that I pay? They didn't seem to think that I had the ability to choose to not pay those fees. Didn't quite work.
Nice try.
Thank you. I always think so. We have, the first time that we heard of this happening, we are sending letters out today and tomorrow. We received a notice from our supplier, Cisco, that some of the vegetables we got were involved in a recall. And they were possibly contaminated with Listeria monocytogenes. The fact is, we served those vegetables to our patients in long-term care, assisted living, and to our acute patients on the 2 days that where that food was made available to us. Our cooking exceeded the level to have killed whatever this contamination was. We don't think that there was any risk to we think there is very little risk to the patients, but we want the public to know that we have dealt with that. They need to be noticed. The physicians and practitioners are aware of it, but it's the first time we've ever had this. So I'm letting you know and the public know about that situation. On December 9, we are going to be converting our PACS system software that's in the radiology department to the new version that Cora, our radiology group, is using. Our team has been up to Ben to learn how it works and how that's going to affect them. You'll not see a change. The radiology department will. So that goes into effect December 9th. The reason I tell you this is because what you will hear time and time again is there are perpetually software upgrades, changes in how we deliver service, constantly going on. I'm just letting you know that that's happening. On November 13th, we are going to be visited by a group with the Northwest Safety and Quality Partnership. And they're going to be helping us all day long working on some of the quality and safety issues. and those involving some behavioral health integration, some immunization issues, so the rapid response teams, and some of our diabetic management. So a lot of issues that we think they will benefit us. This group was formed throughout the United States. Hospitals and regions have been working on improving the service we deliver, and especially reduce the amount of injuries we cause to patients. When people come to the hospital, they have injuries that happen. People make mistakes. You've heard about the wrong limb being cut off and all that kind of stuff. Well, it happens. So the United States has worked very hard in setting up systems to try to control it. We had a fairly robust system in Oregon, and the person that was running it retired, and we sort of floundered as a state trying to deal with that. So the state of Washington has done an incredible job. While we had a 2-3 member department in the association, the state of Washington is 30 plus people in their quality and safety department. So the state of Oregon contracted with them. We're working well together. One of the reasons why we have a close relationship is the organizations like Providence and Peace Health and Kaiser have hospitals in both Oregon and in Washington. So it made a lot of synergistic sense. So as part of the contract with the Washington Hospital and the Oregon Hospital Association paid a lot of money to do this, all hospitals in the state of Oregon are getting these teams coming out to help us. And so they're going to be here. And that's a really exciting thing for us to help them, to have them help us to become better and focus on some of the things that we're doing. Corey Hundy in our quality department will be involved in all of our departments, not all, many of our departments, those areas I talked about, will be working with this group. Pretty exciting stuff. We talked about state surveys. You know, we get surveys for the acute side, we get surveys for long-term care, assisted living. I told you about how we were supposed to be surveyed by the state for a mental health service. Remember, our outpatient service is a whole section that contracts with the county called the CMHP, the Community Mental Health Plan. We were supposed to come in August, but they couldn't get a hotel room because of rounding, remember? So then they were going to come in September. Turns out, they're not going to come at all. They did it all virtually. So we sent them a bunch of material. It's too far to drive. And we've got a response there. We're dealing with our corrections. There weren't a lot of big issues. We're still waiting for our long-term care survey, and our acute survey has not occurred yet. So when we get these surveys, they come back with findings. We have to respond to them. We are doing that. We did with our home health and hospice survey, just was finished, just don't forget, November 18, 8:30 until 1:30 or so, 2 o'clock is our strategic planning meeting where we're going to be talking about recruitment. So everybody's got that on their schedule. It's been a little bit stressful because we do not have our human resources director and Davi resigned as our clinics director, and we haven't had a long-term care director of nurses. We have interviews next week and the week after for the HR position. We have an offer out to an individual for the long-term care director of nurses position that unfortunately became available when one of the candidates we hired didn't quite work out. Hopefully I'll know before the end of this week that person will accept the offer. And then we'll be interviewing for clinics director. So as a consequence, one of the things that we did put on our agenda, our meeting agenda for the board, is the employee of the month. And so what I would like to do is, in light of all the extra work that so many people are doing because that fact that they don't have a director, they don't have somebody, it makes it not just hard for the employees. I mean, it's hard for me, but it's harder for the employees. Our employees of the month are Holly Fairburn and Lacey Cleveland in our HR department. They really have done a good job in holding things together this whole year. So they are. Just want you to know, I didn't say on our building that we purchased across the street that we are fixed up and getting ready for use for either by our visiting doctors or nurses. I said that we would spend roughly $20,000 in the time to fix it. We're well within budget. So, there's about that. That concludes my comments. Do you have any questions of me? What did I forget?
Holiday party.
That was the other part that I meant to tell you. Please do not fail to put on your calendar the employee Christmas party is on December 13th. It's a Friday night. It will be at the Elks. Please, very much would like to, if you can, be there. Bring your spouse. It's a great time, and it's an opportunity for employees to understand who you are and get some time for everyone to celebrate. So, December 13th. At the Elks Club. Any questions about anything I can
Is the nursing union contract completed in the drawer?
It is, and finally got both contracts, got everything signed, and now they're squabbling about whether or not we have done all the things we're supposed to do. So, we're off to the races.
But it's still signed and done.
It is now signed and complete. And all of the changes to the wages or to the terms that were agreed upon were handled and put into this paper. So that is all finished.
That should,
It's retroactively to, pardon?
the nurses should have been very happy with it.
Some are, some have opportunities to challenge things that we do. Or don't do for that matter, in their view. But we do that on occasion.
Do we have anything for executive session?
I think I've talked more than I should. No. Unless somebody has something that they,
Too little information that night, exactly.
Okay,
so should we talk after or?
Yeah,
well,
Okay.
we do have executive session material.
I can give you an update. Yes, we do.
Okay. So informational,
On the holiday party, the time, et cetera, they will send us more information.
Yep, I'll send that out and I'll get an RSVP because we gotta make sure we have enough food for everybody, but yeah. But
It'll
that's
be
just put on
roughly-
your radar.
It'll be roughly 5:30 to 6 o'clock. 6:30 will be cocktail hour, and then 6:30 will be dinner, and then as quickly thereafter, we'll have the time when we award the employee of the year selected by the employees. We'll have the awards for longevity, the service award pins, and we do raffles and a variety of
So how many people attend this?
200 plus,
pretty much.
maybe 400 sometimes. That's never been 400.
I don't think quite that many.
that's a little large.
Okay, well, it's more than,
That's a Trump clock.
A full Elks.
We do, we pack the Elks.
Okay, so with that, we'll take a short break and adjourn the regular session, and we'll go into executive session under ORS 192